Okay, it's January 31st, 2018, and I'm here with Lisa and Sheila and Katie, and we're going to have a wrap-up of day 7, which was the final day of proceedings in the alleged trial and case in Tennessee, and we can talk about all what you guys have. I don't think I printed out your notes yet, but I can pull those up to ask you some questions. And then maybe I'll share with, I just was telling all of you guys, I just had 2 nice phone calls with Randy, so I talked to him for a little more than a half an hour on the phone. So that was nice.
And share what you shared with us in regards to his demeanor.
I didn't hear you. In regards to what?
In regards to his demeanor.
Oh, he's doing great. He's tired. You know, it's a lot of work and all sorts of stuff associated from that. But
Big Randy was not only in the house, he brought the house down. Let me just say that.
Yepper. Yeah, it wasn't just Big Randy. It was the biggest Randy I've ever seen.
Well, I was explaining to him, I was telling him what, I painted for him a word picture of what I had experienced, how I had experienced the trial from, many states away. And yes, input from you guys and others, but how I experienced it from here and my hooking up and being in there. And I described a few particular things to him, and he laughed and he said, "You'd think you were sitting right in a chair right there watching." So anyways, he had a very good energy. Like I said, he was tired and he's ready for this to be completed and to really play full on in the next steps. And there's a lot of next steps. So yeah. And we talked about, he always likes to get news updates, and I'm not talking about, your general news. He wants to know the read of stuff. So we were going on the energetics of that, and then I could point to different articles and different little bits of data. He mentioned that he had listened to the State of the Union address, and I told him that what I had done is pull down the actual given remarks, because they always post 2. They post prior to the whatever the remarks are, and then what's actually said, because they often change a little bit. So I told him I was going to publish that because there was either 6 or 7 places that I counted where certain words and phrases were punched by President Trump. And for me, if you had, well, maybe not if you did, but if you had, eyes to see and ears to hear, you could tell that there was an additional meaning to that. And so he wanted to, so I'm going to put that up for everybody on the IUV, but also mostly I'll get it tonight because he wants to see it. So I'll send it to him via email.
Yeah, our Katie picked up on several things as well.
Yeah.
In that, so.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I picked up on one thing.
What's that, Katie? We didn't hear you. What?
No, I feel like I just picked up on one part of it. When he said it, it just stuck out immediately. Because what, in context, he should have said, what was it? The people's, or no, he should have said public's trust. Like something about reinstilling the public's trust. But instead he said public trust.
Right.
And I immediately caught that and was like, I don't feel like that was by mistake.
Well, and he also talked, one of the things had to talk about a new American moment. And that's not your typical, political ease speak. That might be something you or I might say in this moment of now, kind of a thing. So,
right.
But there were a bunch of things. So, anyways, that's kind of what we talked about, and Randy mentioned that we were talking a lot about the compassion that we were holding for every being on the planet and beyond, and former controllers. We were talking about, in specifics, to the compassion for members of the prosecution team, and then so and that went into then the very visible cognitive dissonance that could be seen. And I don't think he was surprised, but maybe to the extent of what he was seeing outwardly shown in mannerisms, in the speech or the misspeech of Davidson.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, it was definitely present, and but I guess they all had a role to play. But something, I'd never seen any of these folks perform their function before this, so I have nothing to compare it to. However, what I saw today in particular out of Ms. Davidson as she went about her closing statement.
Both times. The closing and the redirect.
Right. Because she has an opportunity to give a rebuttal. Apparently the government, which I never knew that I thought there was, each side had an opportunity to do a closing statement and that was it. But apparently I don't know if it's just in a federal case or in all cases, she had not used up all her time and she was then allowed to actually what I consider have the last word.
Right.
And in both of her times at the podium, my read and my feel, of the two prosecutors involved, Amory Sfalto and Cynthia Davidson. Cynthia Davidson was of course, at least it appeared and felt to me. I know she was what they call first chair, and Amory was second chair. So I'm certain that Amory perhaps is not as experienced as Cynthia. However, throughout the trial, Cynthia was more sure of herself, way more sure of herself than Amory was. However, at the end, during the closing argument or the closing statement, she didn't seem to be as sure of herself. And it was more, the feel I got was more like I almost want to say a child that was saying, no, see, this is what's going on here. See, and also actually kind of nervous too, a little unsettled and unsure of herself.
Well, she got stuck a lot too, so she'd be going in, and the one thing she was like, they're liars, 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 liars. They lied. They lie. That's literally all you could hear the whole time. And there was points too where she was talking, then she'd be like, and would go into it. And so she was not firm on what she was saying. Like it was very splotchy. And I was like, okay, well, maybe on the redirect, she's going to totally bounce back and be, firm in whatever she's saying. And even on the redirect, it's still, she did the lowest blow I could never even think of for a redirect, because she literally took a picture of Heather from the one video, paused it on the point where she was rolling up her tobacco, which she even stated in court, the reason why she rolls tobacco is because it's cheaper than actually buying cigarettes, so it's a way to save money. Pause on that picture and then quoted something that she said in the video to everybody in that conference room, and said, do you smell something funny?
No, something doesn't smell
or something
right.
Doesn't smell right. And that that really struck something with me, because again, like I've said before, is I'm like, show me the facts, show me data behind what it is you're trying to argue. And what she did there was none of that. You were literally just trying to bring down someone's character and make them look shitty in front of a bunch of people. And totally hits me the wrong way. The second I saw that, my jaw dropped. And I mean, I was like, I didn't think they could go any lower than that. Like, I didn't think they were even possible of stooping that low when it came to it, to be honest.
I personally feel, though, that showed,
yes,
again, their desperation.
Yeah.
And also,
well, keep in mind here that, when we started this, there were, I have it in the record on the IUV about the different, and David was the one who recounted some of that, but of what kinds of positions, jobs, and industry and sectors of, the economy that the people are that make up the jury. So, the prosecution purposely set out the requests, and because they can make no mistake, they can pull who they want in for different jury selections, and kind of the flow of the mindset, and knowledge base and experience. So they set out to do that.
I also need to say, BZ, that the reason I brought it up to begin with, in regards to the change that I saw in Ms. Davidson, over from her more confident self to what I witnessed today.
Have I told you that we have much?
Okay, so now we've switched to the phone, and we have Lisa and Sheila and Katie on the phone. Okay, so why don't you pick up? You had couple points that you wanted to address, Lisa, Katie. So why don't you start with one of those, and we'll all intend clear audio from all quarters on this.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So the first thing that I wanted to go over was, in the beginning, Heather got to go up and cross-examine Terry Wilshire, which was he was the
forensics accountant.
No, he worked in like the jail, the detention center or whatever. Yeah, so he worked in the jail, and so he was kind of describing like the paperwork and the processing, or what happens when they're processing inmates and stuff like that. And so they actually found a lot of documents that were straight from the NCIC system, and were able to basically show that the warrant that the FBI had didn't have any type of fax notification on it. So typically when you fax something, it'll come up and it'll have like the date, the time, and all of that it was faxed over. And they had it on other documents, I feel like, but not on the warrant that they put into evidence. So they presented that. They showed discrepancies between the dates and times from the straight NCIC system and versus the documents that the government presented, because those were not from any system. All of them were handwritten, or most were handwritten. Some were typed and then signed, but they weren't actually from any type of database. So that, for me, and I think for all of us, was very significant that they were able to counter that and show, I mean, to me, actual proof of when he was actually taken into process. And it showed to the amount of time that they claimed, like the hours that he had to wait. I mean, it showed that. I think a lot of them came up at like 5 a.m. when they were actually finished with everything on the day, what is it, the 12th, or was it the 3rd? Yeah, the 12th, because they got him on the 11th, and he wasn't actually processed until around 5 a.m. or finished 5 a.m. on the 12th.
So I'm gonna interject here for a minute for people who don't know. The NCIC is the National Crime Information Center. It's an FBI information system. So everything the proper chain of command and chain of evidence is for everything to be entered in that, just as Katie just said, so that it can all have timestamps and backup corroboration of exactly what went through and what happened. Okay, keep going.
Well, I'm going to let her come back, but I wanted to say something real quick. The NCIC computer had Randy listed as a female. I caught that.
Yeah, there were some discrepancies in
Right.
the
Well,
actual.
Heather has changed origin of skin color many times over her travel on the hotels throughout America. So yes.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I also wanted to bring up a point too. They only called one witness up, and they basically recalled Parker Still up to the stand. Heather did. Yeah, Heather recalled Parker up to the stand, and what I loved about this part specifically was her questioning basically got to the point that Parker went off of the information that was given to him from his office, because Heather asked him specifically. She said, "How do you?" She's like, "You never saw the warrant. How did you get the information?" And he said, "Well, our office sent it to us." And talked about, I don't know if he specifically said the people in the wire room are what send the information, and so they never actually show them upstairs. Yeah, I want to say he did say wire room. Give them the information, and that's what they go off of. Which, I mean, honestly, I can understand that. Your boss is telling you, hey, this is what you have. All right, that's what you're going to go off of. So for me, that removed the responsibility from Parker and onto the management in the FBI, because he was going off of what information he was given. So I really love that part about it, because the intent is never to hurt any of the ones that win, or make anyone look bad that was involved in it. It was to expose what's actually going on at the upper levels. So that to me was significant. So that was the only witness that they called. The next big part that stuck out for me was after, I don't know if it was right before the break, but normally after breaks, that's when Varlin will ask both the prosecution and the defense questions about certain things when it comes to, like, the jury charge that they give at the end and all that kind of stuff. And so at this point, Heather requested to have the UCC filings added into the trial, added into evidence after all the case and everything was closed. So they had both rested on all their cases, and she then, after everyone had rested, asked to bring this evidence in there because it's been referenced so many times. It was in the factualized trust that the government entered into evidence and, gave good explanation on why it should be entered in. Well, the interesting part on this is, of course, they got, the prosecution stood up and objected to it. It was Anne-Marie who did, and they went in and, saying the same things that they did, but at one point, Anne-Marie was going back and forth. She was like, well, we object because there's no relevance when it comes to jurisdiction, when it comes to all of this, but, I mean, it would make sense, like, we don't object to it if it's under this regard. It's okay if it's about this, but then we don't, because if she brings up jurisdiction and if the government has been foreclosed on, then we object to it. And so Varlin stopped and looked at her, like, with a very confused manner, and was like, okay, so, like, are you objecting to it or not? He was like, because, I mean, I'm kind of confused by your explanation right now, like, so are you allowed, like, do you object or not? And she, stammered a little bit and was like, well, no, the prosecution does not object, and just sat back down. And so for me, that was huge, because you could tell they were trying, but they had no reasoning, not to include it. So that was huge because the UCC's got entered into evidence. Now, of course, Heather wasn't able to actually go through it and read it to them, but at least they'll be able to look at them. And what I also found interesting is Davidson asked to, she also talked about how she wanted, she's like, well, I haven't had a chance to cross Heather on this, and I really don't want to reopen more evidence into it and then have to cross again. And Varlin, he overruled that. He said that, he was like, no, that's something you wanted to cross her on that, and I'm not allowing that. So that was significant for me as well.
Okay, let me interject here. So from what I've heard from several people who were there, who were paying particular close attention to this particular point within their case, there's no record from the Federal Reserve of the actual transaction received or sent. The Fed gave no evidence as to the transaction. And it was not evidence, the only purported, and it's hearsay, was that the USAA said this happened. So anything you want to add that you caught that changes what I just said or adds other specific information and data to that?
No, I mean, what you said is absolutely correct. Heather did point out in her closing that all that was presented was the proof that something, or that it was returned, or the proof that it was reversed.
Well, that USAA
claimed that it was reversed. Yeah, that on their system, all they showed was that it had been reversed. But there was no proof or no evidence to show where the money actually went. So that's 100% correct. And she did bring that up. Heather brought that up in her closing.
Okay.
On that as well.
Okay, and anything else that you want to, any one of you want to call attention to in Heather's closing today?
You have the phone. Continue.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if you wanted to say something.
You took all the notes.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, Randy did his closing before lunch, which was absolutely incredible. Oh my God. I cannot even tell you how amazing that was. So, and I think we already talked about that in the beginning.
Yeah, and he was very pleased with it as well, so that tells me that he was solid in how good it felt, because normally he needs, in some instances, outside confirmation and corroboration of that, and so he was clear in his knowing of that.
Well, since that's been brought up, I want to say something about that. That speech, for me, energetically, something happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel that it affected the entire room. I really, truly do not see how I could have been busted wide open, as full on, hugely wide open as I was. I mean, I
can feel it coming back.
I know.
Yeah.
I physically felt as though my heart were going to burst out of my chest. Mm-hmm. That's how huge, energetically, what his speech did for me personally. Mm-hmm. So I really don't see how others in that room could not have been affected.
Well, and he said from where he was, because of his vantage point, he could see the jury because he's talking right at them. So he was giving me on the phone tonight, recounting with specifics of what he was noticing with his physical eyes, and then also picking up as he was giving that.
And I mean, we were like everybody, like all of us in there, we were all in tears. Like I'm not like we were. I mean, because that's how expansive this was. And I know that during these talks, I haven't cried, or I haven't. I mean, like I feel emotional, but I haven't shown it. And I was so emotional and so expansive during that. I mean, it was amazing. And so once we, we're about to go on, leave for, I don't know if it was for a break or for lunch, we all just walked up to Randy, and we were just like, oh my God, like we all just want to go to and hug him so bad. Yeah. And Randy saw like the reactions on our faces and how it affected us, and like we were all, and then he started crying, and we were all in tears. Like it was so moving and so phenomenal that like everyone needs to know how amazing it was.
Yeah. Randy made a point of saying, talking about that moment on the phone to me. Let's see if I can pull back pretty close to his exact words. He said, it felt as if you were all standing around him in a full, complete circle, although you're not allowed to do that. and you could only have a certain physical distance that that you had to keep. But the way he experienced it was that not only did he feel the eyes and the emotion and the physical, even if you're not sensitive to energy, you can feel if there's someone, kind of standing next to you, even if they're not touching you. So he could feel that from the linear level, but he could also feel each of the energy fields of all of you with that. But as he was in the moment that seemed to stop in time, kind of like on a TV show would be freeze frame, and he's, still moving, he could feel all of, it was as if all the other beings, as part of Source, were in that moment. It was like a window had opened up.
Yes.
Yeah, he broke the world.
And he could feel all of that there. And one of the things that really made his heart soar was the way I would describe what he was sharing with me on the toning of it was a direct window of Source had opened up.
Yeah.
And not only was he feeling it might have been the focus point, but it was then transmitted back out in a reverberation manner to the whole planet and beyond.
Yes.
If I've described that well, but that's what he shared.
To all that is.
Yeah, I mean, it was so big and so powerful. You explained it perfectly.
Yeah.
So going off of that, okay, so now that everybody fully understands how powerful this experience was, okay, so we're all leaving, we're all still expanding and just in utter emotional, shock from what just took place, right? Because it was so huge. Yeah, so, we're going out, we go to lunch, we come back, we're coming back from lunch. I was extremely surprised because typically when we get into the courtroom, we're the first ones in there. When we walked in after lunch today, there were a bunch of officials already in there. And not only were they in there, but they were sitting in the seats that we typically sit in. So, for instance, I sit in the first pew closest to the door that you enter in, and there were two female U.S. attorneys, or they worked with the Attorney General, sitting in the spot that I typically sit in, or the spot that David and I typically sit in. And so I just walked up and I sat next to him, and then, but in where Lisa and everyone else sits, there was, people sitting there too. We had seen them periodically throughout the past, week and a half or past week, but they've never all been in the room at the same time. So the second we got in there, something felt off in the energies and everything. I mean, honestly, it kind of took us off guard. I mean, it did. So that's how I want to frame what went into. So when Heather went up there to speak, the words that she was saying to me were powerful. She made extremely good points, but you couldn't feel it the way that you could feel what Randy said.
Yeah, it was flat.
It was flat, and I couldn't understand it at the time. It didn't make sense. Because she was making tremendous points, but then I also noticed the jury was not staying fully focused on it.
No, I felt flat.
Yes, all of us.
There was a blankness in the room.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
It was also busy. Right as we were finishing lunch, as we were making our way back to the courthouse, being in the company of these two ladies as long as I have now, and living with Lisa as long as I have, I'm accustomed to their energy fields, their mannerisms, their, for all intents and purposes, their thought processes.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, Katie has gone to take the phones back to her car. Lisa and I are walking back to the courthouse. And all of a sudden, Lisa is swirling and doubting herself and doubting her abilities and her role in what we're doing here. And this is not like her at all. Not in this particular case. And the entire time we've been here, she's been very focused. She's been very specific, knowing specifically what her role is, what she is to do. She's been very focused on what she's to do. Very no nonsense about what her mission and her role is here. Very knowing of that. Yeah. And all of a sudden, she was very swirly.
Lisa, how would you categorize a direction or a level or layer from which you were sensing that? So you have the ability, we all do, but I'm going to speak directly to yours. You have the ability to bring that back and be the observer of what occurred and then look beyond the physical being, linear being of you being swirly, and what do you notice?
What do I notice?
Yeah. So if you're watching a video, because you're the observer as well, you're watching a video of this being called Lisa and picking up on the swirliness, just look around as if you're paying more close attention to the other aspects of the video that you're watching. What do you feel into? What do you notice? All right, can you characterize anything else that may be going on at the same time as you look back into that?
Well, I feel like I'm being observed, and I don't know, shamed, and I'm beginning to shrink.
Okay, and is there any kind of direction or section that's coming from within the courthouse, or?
You mean section of the courthouse, or?
Just, I mean, if you're, like if you're watching a video and you look to one side of the, the screen, the frame that's on there, you notice, I'm not saying this is that you did, but I'm just asking you if you can tune into that. Do you notice, over in the corner you could catch the edge of a building, or could you, so energetically, could you catch the edge of something? Because you have the ability to do that. I'm just asking if you can pull it online right this moment to do that.
Okay, I'm trying to do. I'm working on this. I can feel being pulled to my right.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. That's good. Because when we started talking about this swirl,
yeah,
we were at the crosswalk, and to the right is the courthouse.
Okay. Okay.
So continue.
Okay. Oh, that's all I got. I'm feeling heavy darkness on my right.
Okay. I just wanted to see if you may, on reflection, you may more come to you, but I just wanted to, it's also a good way to point out to it, because it's happening right this moment, is that we don't just look at something if our face is facing one way, say at noon on a clock face, and we can catch something out of the corner of our right eye, which would be 15 minutes on the clock, right? So number 3, or to the left. We actually have the ability to be us on the ground in the human body experiencing that, and then observing it, and then also being all of it. And everybody can do that. Some are more tuned in and have the ability to kind of, it's as if there were 3 cameras. If someone's familiar with camera work when you're watching TV,
Right.
and in the control room we say go roll camera 1, cut to camera 2, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what I was asking. But so we'll let that lie for a minute. Is there anything else that you wanted to? I know you had one other point. I thought it was, Katie, that you wanted to bring attention to.
I can't remember now. Because
Okay.
it was just something about Heather and her closing, and just the mood and just how the room felt. I mean, we honestly, walking out of there, I felt very confused and doubtful. I mean, that's the best way to describe it.
I will say, BZ, that whatever took place, whether it was man-made or multidimensionally driven, whatever took place, my sense of it was beings began pulling their energy fields back into themselves
Because of that.
because of doubt. And I don't understand. I don't really truly comprehend all of the goal there. I will go on record, however, as saying that in the time period that the 3 of us had before we got on this conversation with you, we went into ourselves, we centered ourselves, and we cleared that doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to clarify, too, that the doubt didn't come from the words coming out of Heather's mouth.
No.
That is
Right.
not, because I'll tell you what
Right.
she said.
I was doubting
I want to clarify that. That's why I was so confused when we walked out of there. Because it's not that I was doubting Randy or her or anything in general. It was that this doubt existed, and I had no idea where the hell it was coming from.
Well, let me offer this, because this may help the 3 of you, and anybody else listening, if it does as well, that's fine, but this is mostly for you 3. Very often what happens when you have a large influx of expansive energy come in, particularly when it's a heart expansion that's going on, and the resonance of that vibrational frequency that is held by words that are given voice to on a linear level, then that transmits. So the way that occurred that you described with Randy and his closing statement, that also occurred when I shared the description that Randy and I shared with what had transpired when at the end when you were all around him. When something of that, for lack of kind of a linear placeholder, when something of that frequency vibrational caliber is opened and streamed forth, because that's really what happened. Oftentimes what accompanies that is just what you've described, is a lot of kind of uncertainty and doubt. And what is happening, and we've talked about this much before, is the expressing and expelling of deep within the cellular memory of the streams of thought forms that are doubt and confusion. Because what's happening is you're actually lifting off layers from within that have to come out, so that all that just was transmitted and came within that, what in essence was the morphogenic resonance field of all of the beings within that courtroom building, and then closely around Randy towards the end, has to move out of that. so that there's enough space for all that, if that makes sense. So that is oftentimes what happens.
No, I think I totally comprehend what Dee is saying right now. You know remember how she talked to me about my breathing and how that has to be expelled and expressed, and that's grief.
Yeah.
One of the biggest issues that you have had has been your self-doubt. And you were expressing it and expecting it in that moment. And it's okay to get rid of that now. We can let that go. All of us can let that go.
Yeah,
I want to make it very clear. I want to make it very clear in this moment of now, BC, for anyone that may listen to this at any point in the future. The three of us have had the last several hours sitting here looking for the answers to what this has been about, because we are very clear in ourselves that this doubt had nothing to do with this alleged case or those involved, the defendants involved. It was very clear for me that it had to do, I thought it was something being beamed at us to try to make us swirly. And start folks doubting each other and start, trying to, I don't know, just, make things all squirrely and whatnot. Here, have a piece of my snotty rag. But the thing that you just shared with us makes so much more sense. And I can hear the truth of the fact that Lisa is now in tears because this has been one of her largest issues, is her self-doubt. I've doubted too, but I've really let a lot of that go in recent bits here. Mine has been more grief, but doubt was a huge one for her.
Right. And keep in mind that there's not a nefarious, when something is occurring, we're all complicit in it, and another way to say it is there isn't always a nefarious character hiding behind the building who's shooting a ray beam gun at you. It's all perfect and perfectly done. Sometimes it's messy, but it's all perfect and perfectly done nonetheless.
Yes. Well,
so I can see that we've mopped the floor with that one.
Yes.
So I think unless someone has anything left to say, we'll just close it here.
Well, I have one thing that I want to end with.
Okay.
That was from what Randy said. There was one thing I wrote down, and it's
from his speech.
Yes. Okay. And I want to leave with this because I think this is going to be an awesome way to end this call. So, Randy said near the end of his speech, they can shut up one, but they can't shut up the one people.
Yeah.
And that is so significant, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because he spoke his truth, and he was right.
Yeah.
They can shut up one, but they can't shut up all of us. And that is what this is about, and that's what we're going to focus on. And I want to leave it with that, because I thought that was extremely powerful.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Katie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And go back to, I'll remind people, they can go back to the conversations, interestingly enough, that he and I have recorded out to the world from his hotel room, where he and I talk about that a lot, that people need to stand up and stand in their knowing, and if they're not certain of that knowing, to connect with it, because not only is this for all, but it is everyone has a job, a part, a role to play, And we have been, the two of us together, Randy and I have been saying for a while, it's time to do that, and you know, the memo needs to get delivered. However that works for each person, but this is it. So that's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Kitty.
Yeah. You're right.
Yes, you do. Thank you, BZ. I want everyone to know too, BZ, right before we go, that I have requested, and I'm pretty sure that I will be granted the privilege to be able to record Randy's speech for everyone as soon as possible. I'm hoping tomorrow morning, because that, in my mind, needs to go out to every being on this planet as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, he'll be able to record it. I'll be able to record him giving it himself.
Ooh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. Give a touch base with me in the morning, and we'll see you all from there.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you, BZ.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Love you. Big hugs.
Bye.